Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us tonight an author, but before we meet him, we're going to meet his dog.
This
What's your
is
dog's name?
Willow.
Willow. Nice. Based off of the movie?
No, we just really liked earthy names and decided to go with an earthy name because she has earthy colors to her.
Nice. That's a big fluffy dog. I wanna say it looks like a part poodle mix.
Oh, absolutely, yes. She is a standard poodle and Saint Bernard.
Nice. Okay. I had a schnoodle growing up, so a schnauzer poodle, a little bit shorter, smaller, but he
Mm-hmm.
had the kind of fluffy hair on the bangs too. So
Oh
I
yeah,
love those
yeah.
those
Sh-
poodle
she's
mixes.
a she's a 70-pound carpet.
Ironically, our next door neighbor growing up also had a poodle mix. I think it was a golden doodle though, so he was
Yeah,
much larger. His
yeah.
name is
They're very
Chewbacca.
popular.
Okay, well now that we've met your dog and talked about dogs, what's your name?
Yeah. So my name's Alan. I'm 30 and I have a newsroom background. So I started working for newspapers and magazines and things like that. And then I branched into editing and then now I put out books.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I feel like writing for a newspaper. Did you say that you did article writing for newspapers, like
Yeah,
journalism?
yeah.
Okay, so I feel like that's a little bit of a different type of writing than creative writing. What would you say the main difference is?
Yeah, it's very different. It's a lot more structured than writing creatively would be. Um and it's a lot more targeted. Like every sentence, every word has to have a purpose, and you're working within like super tight, um, word constraints and time constraints. So when you have, let's say, 40,000 words to work with, you get a lot more flexibility with how you use them versus when you have to fit a lot of information in like 500 words. So
Mm-hmm.
when it's
Yeah.
like tight like that, it's you have to be like very very careful with your word economy and things like that.
Now, would you say that you tend to err on the side of I have so much to work with, I'm going to just take up every single word I can, or are you still like trying to stave off your old newspaper background and you're a little bit too brief?
Sometimes I feel like there's moments where I can expand or I should expand, and like I have an editor that works for me, and one of the things that she's always telling me to do is expand on this, expand on that. So like maybe not consciously, but like a lot of times I am briefer than I should be, and I need to go back and fix that later on.
Yeah. I've done some like beta reads for people, and I feel like there are definitely parts in a book where you should skip ahead, but I feel like people
Mm,
tend to skip over too much. There's too much brevity, and they're like,
yeah,
2.5 years later, you're like, wait a second, like 2.5 years, a lot can happen in 2.5 years. Like, let's make it at least a paragraph, not just 2.5 years a sentence.
yeah. I've done because I transitioned from working in a newsroom to being an editor, and so I worked at like a couple of U.S. publishers here and there, and then did a lot of freelance work as well. And editing, I always found that writers fall into that trap sometimes of like, you know what it is? It's like they're writing cinematically. They're writing as if it's a movie where it's like scene, 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 and I have to remind them all the time like this is not a visual medium. This is a text medium. So you can utilize that more effectively.
Yeah, I feel like I fall into that trap as well when I'm writing of being too overly descriptive in a scene. I've gotten that feedback before, which means maybe I should just
Mm.
write screenplays. I don't know. We'll get there someday. Turn my books into screenplays. There we go.
You know
So
what?
real quick,
I'd
I
love
think
to do
you.
all of it.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Uh, okay. Yeah. So real quick, it looks like you also are a publisher. Is that correct?
Yeah. So one of my like dream jobs was to start up my own small press publisher. So I got a investor who I worked out the details with. I got an influx of money to get it sort of kicked off, and my first book is sort of like our flagship product. But in 2024, we have three more books. One of them is going to be another one of mine, but I also have two other authors that have signed on with us. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because I've been in this industry for about 10 years now, and I've been on both sides. You know, I've published other books under pen names and things like that. I've published graphic novels and stuff like that, and like I've also worked on the editorial side. And this business is very unfriendly to new authors and very predatory. There's so many
Yeah.
people who are just like they'll be manipulative, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we're an authentic publisher, and we'll help you out," and then they charge you up to like 12 grand, and they don't even do anything for you. They take your money and they run it through like an AI editor and throw it up on KDP, and then that's it. They don't do anything for you, and you just wasted all of your money, and you're never going to see a penny of that back, because most authors don't even sell, you know, into the triple digits. Most authors sell
Hmm.
under 50 copies. So if you're selling under 50 copies and you're spending 12 grand, that's completely been taken advantage of. You know, that's
Yeah.
completely an abusive relationship with that publisher.
Yeah.
And like,
So on your site, I did see you tag yourself as an ethical publisher, which I'm all for ethics. But what does ethical publisher mean to you?
so it means, number one, that we are upfront about everything that we can do for our authors. So we never um, sort of fudge details. We never like say that we can do things that we can't do. Um, One of the main things is that if you're coming to us with unsolicited finished manuscripts, you don't pay us to like take your manuscript. We don't take the money from our authors. We Later on, we're going to be launching a coaching program that's going to be separate from our publication department. But our publication department does not take a penny from the authors who go through with us. And we explain how the process works. It basically works like any other traditional publisher, where we take a percentage of the royalties and we split it that way. And we go over the contract very clearly with the authors who sign with us. We explain to them what their options are and what we do for them. And unlike a lot of sort of like vanity presses or hybrid presses, or just like quick service publishers, we don't just abandon our authors as soon as they're published, because we don't make money if they don't make money, right? So we work with them on their marketing and promotional work, and all the like post publishing work that is actually like the real hard work that authors have to do. We help them with that. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like where the ethics of the thing come into it, is that we're very focused on making sure that our authors succeed, especially giving voices to first time authors and helping them so they don't get robbed.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things. Hmm, excuse me, I'm kind of fighting something here. One of the things that I've noticed in speaking to authors is that marketing is incredibly hard for them. And that's one of the reasons that I
Oh,
started
it's
this
brutal.
podcast, is to help authors get out there. So as you pick up additional manuscripts, send them to me, and I'll just grill them on my show, and we'll get their book
Absolutely,
out there.
yeah. Yeah, that
So
sounds like a plan.
awesome. A couple further questions on your publishing. Is this a full time thing now for you, or is it kind of a side gig until it gets up and running?
Right now, it's kind of a side thing. So, um, the what's the word? The investor gave us enough that like we could focus a lot of our energy on it. So that's what we did. We got it up to the point where now it's moving. So like any startup, for the first couple of years, it's probably not going to make me any money, but we are seeing a return on the money that was invested into it, which is really good. So, of the money that's been invested into the company, we've already seen something like a 30% return on that.
Wow.
So, that's pretty solid for just having one book out right now and 3 in
Mhm.
development. So, we're just going to keep pushing, and we're hoping that 2025 is when it starts, we can start taking paychecks.
Hmm. Awesome. And what are the genres of the titles that you're planning on pushing out?
So, what we have in development right now um, is they're mostly all like fantasy, or one's like a low fantasy kind of deal. The other's like a fantasy western, and then of course my books are fantasy as well. So right now it's all fantasy all the way down, but we accept most genres. Like we'll accept fantasy, sci-fi, horror, and thriller. Comedy, romance, all the hits.
Okay. What makes you want to pick up a novel?
I've always been a reader. I was got really into books when I was even as a toddler, and it's just something that I've always enjoyed. When what gets me into a specific book is, I don't have like a go-to genre where it's like I only read fantasy, I only read this, I only read that. It's really just like if I'm looking over the cover or the blurb and I get that, like, I pick up on that spark of creativity and like fulfilling storytelling, then I'm suckered in. And for me, that's all it takes, because like I can read a book that's like fantasy, I can read a mystery, I can read a romance novel, and enjoy all of them pretty much equally, just based on like how the story, how fulfilling the narrative of the story is. So I think it's just like
Hmm.
like seeing that creativity come to life is what draws me into books. And I love what the written medium can do uniquely from visual mediums. Because with a book you can really get inside people's heads and get in touch with like their feelings and emotions and the things that they're wrestling with more so than any visual medium can do.
Hmm. Awesome. So one of the other things I saw on your publisher page was that you include developmental editing. Now, is that something that you do, or did you mention that you have somebody else doing that?
So I do the developmental editing myself because that was my specialty. Um,
Hmm.
we right now we outsource our copy editing to freelancers. But I do the developmental editing in house, except for my own stuff. Like I said, I have my own editor on the side who handles all my books. But yeah.
what are some of the biggest challenges that you see people having when you're doing a developmental edit? And so I'll actually, let's pause there before we talk about that. For those that don't know, what is a developmental edit?
Basically, developmental is the operative word. It's working on bringing the manuscript from, whatever state that the author has it in, workshopping it to publish quality in terms of focusing on the narrative, characters, the story development, things like that. So it's basically like perfecting the storyline before you actually like dig into the prose and the grammar and things like that.
Would
The
you
way I like to
suggest that people
explain it,
do a developmental? Sorry, I think there's a little bit of lag.
I was just
Would
gonna
you
say
suggest
the
that?
way I oh sorry, the way I like to
No, go
explain it
ahead.
is
Go ahead.
like you do a developmental edit pretty early on in the process. It's one of the first things you do. Like you finish writing the thing, you do the developmental edit, and then that's when you'd go to like a beta reader group or a critique group, or move on to copy editing. It's like an early stage of the editing process.
Mhm. So, as far as you picking up books as a publisher, I feel like a lot of publishers really want a polished draft before they even agree to sign anything on. Um, are you looking then to get writers before they've, fully polished something, or walk me through that?
So yes, ideally when you submit to a publisher, you've already put it through some pretty solid editing. I mean, traditional publishers will have developmental editors work with you on your book. Like that's one of the main services that they offer is they have their developmental editors tweak it and get it up to their standard of quality. Um, that being said, like most publishers, when people are submitting manuscripts to us, we want them to be in pretty good shape. We understand that um, an author submitting to us will probably not have gone through professional editing before coming to us. So we keep that in mind, and we're not too harsh in that aspect. But there absolutely, yes, has to be a level of professionalism to the quality that they're submitting to us, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to open up a coaching program later on. The idea with the coaching program would be to help authors who are just starting to write, who are like they've maybe just done the plans, or they've written like 5%, and we take them from that like very early like seed stage and help them get up to the point where they would be able to submit their manuscript to publishers. Um,
And when is that service coming? You said 2024?
yeah, we're probably going to launch it in 2024, which means that the authors who sign on for our coaching program, if they do decide to go on and publish with us, they would be published in 2025.
Okay, awesome. So let's move on to your book. Finally, almost 20
Yes.
minutes in, we're finally talking about your writing.
Here we go.
Witch of the Crescent Moon. Did I get that title right?
Yes. So it's a series. The first book in the series is The Witch of the Crescent Moon.
Okay, got it. What was the series title then?
Series title is Selena's Magica Somnia.
Okay. And what genre would you peg this at? Just reading the back, it looked like an urban fantasy type thing.
Yeah, so it's a young adult fantasy. It's set in like a modern setting where magic is not something that is known to the general public of the world. So the magical culture is kind of its own like internal society. Um, so yeah.
Okay, got it. And Excuse me. What? So magic, is this the main character is a witch? Is she doing magic by doing spells, or did she have to study to learn something, or does she have an innate ability? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so the way the magic system works is it's based off of circles and sigils. So the basis is any girl or woman has the innate ability to cast spells as long as they have the circles and they practice and study and learn how to use magic. If they have magic circles, then they can use spells. Witches are kind of like the next level up from that. Witches have their own sigil, which is like a special magic circle that only works for them. And it basically gives them, free reign over any kind of magic that they can think of that falls under their sigil, their symbol. So any kind of magic that Selena can sort of understand as being under the powers of the moon, she can do that. Um, so uh, the early parts of the book are her becoming a witch and inherit, well, first trying to inherit the magical sigil of her predecessor, and then developing her own sigil and developing her own magic.
Okay. And where did you come up with this magic system? Do you practice magic?
No, I just I don't know. I was just kind of like playing around with it with different story concepts and ideas. The first instance in my mind of like the magic system was this one character Yukiko in the book. I had this idea of like two witches, one who is like who used magic related to the sun, and one who used magic related to the moon. And Yukiko was the one related to the moon. And I kind of like pictured how that kind of magic would translate into like the practical sense. Like, what does that actually mean? What can she do with it? And I kind of just expanded from there.
Hmm.
But it
Okay.
started
What
with
was your
those two.
original? Okay. What was your original inspiration for the book and the plot line then?
It's hard to say like what specifically was the spark. Um, I was just kind of playing around with different ideas. I knew I wanted to like I wanted to put something out and start something up in 2022 is when I first started like really working on the concepts. Um, so yeah, it's all. I don't know if this is just me or if other authors have this too, but like I have a hard time like pinpointing what the exact like spark was, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Sometimes I just like I go for walks and something just pops in my head and then I just start like running with an idea until there's something that I can actually like build off of.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
I
I get that
mean,
kind of like accumulation of ideas as well.
yeah.
Like, I'll just be stewing on a ton of things, and then they'll kind of all just tie together. And I'm like, oh, I got a book now.
I mean, like there are like other stories that provide some like inspiration. Like I'm a big fan of like when I was a kid, I watched Card Captors, for example, and like they have the each character has their own magic circle, and one is like the stars, and one is like the moon and the sun combined, and one is like uh like time, and everyone has their own unique thing. Um, and like I'm a big fan of like a lot of video games, like a lot of From Software games, you know, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Elden Ring and things like that. So I feel like a lot of the inspiration for spells and things like that come from sources like that. But if I had to like find one specific thing, like it's tough. I don't think I could narrow it down.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned earlier, I think you said it's a young adult. So your target audience then
Mm.
would be young adult. Who is the perfect person to read this book?
I would say young women in their teens would probably identify the most with Selena and her companions.
Okay. What's the main source of conflict?
Um, in the first book, it is Selena developing her magical skills and talents. Early on in the book, um, we meet the mentor type character, Seath, and what he is he's a consort, which is he's a man who a witch has shared her powers with, either because like they're partners or they're married or whatever the reason. They have a very close intimate relationship, so she is able to share her powers with him. So he was the consort to the witch Yukiko. Yukiko died 30 years before the book began, and when Seath meets Selena, he finds that for whatever reason she's being guided by spells that Yukiko left behind before she died, and he believes that she can inherit Yukiko's magical sigil and basically become the next Witch of the Full Moon. Um, so a lot of the conflict in the first book is centered around Selena training and developing her powers, um, and trying to sort of fill Yukiko's shoes.
Okay. Gotcha. So, final question before we wrap this up.
Sure.
What messages are you trying to share through your main character and your plot here? Because I feel like the young adult audience is a very impressionable audience, and the
Mm.
kinds of books that they read when they're younger can kind of inform what the rest of their reading life will look like, and perhaps even some of their choices and life paths and stuff like that. So walk me through that.
So one of the elements of Selena's character development is in the beginning, she finds herself being very passionless and kind of just drifting through her day-to-day life. Like, you know, she draws, but she's not super into it. She attends her classes, she gets good grades, but it's kind of just like some stuff that she has to do. But when it comes to magic, it's something that finally makes her feel passionate about it, and inspires her to delve into it and learn more and study more and develop her talents and grow as a witch. And so a lot of the messaging would be like, find your thing, you know, find the thing that you can be passionate about and work hard at it and stick with it even when it is challenging and even with it when it is hard, because it's worth it. It's worth it to have something that you feel like gives your life meaning. It's worth it to work hard at something that you believe in. So I would say those are sort of the messages.
Awesome. That was great. Um, any final comments before I let you go?
Um, it is a series, so I have the second book is currently in editing and should be out around March. and then there will be more books after that. So the first book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. So if you get into it, read it. You won't have to wait too long for the resolution to that. It's coming in March.
All right, awesome. Everybody, AV Dawn. And there's going to be clapping right here. I just have to edit it in because the soundboard isn't working. So